Thomas Mitchell had been a widower for 3 years when he finally worked up the courage to try online dating again. His daughter Emma was 12 now and had been the one to suggest it over breakfast one Saturday morning. "Dad, you need to get out more," she had said while pouring too much syrup on her pancakes. "All you do is work and drive me to soccer practice." Thomas had laughed it off at first, but later that night after Emma was asleep he found himself downloading one of those dating apps his younger brother kept mentioning. The whole thing felt strange and unfamiliar, like trying to learn a new language at 52 years old. He matched with a woman named Jolie who seemed nice enough. She was a teacher with a warm smile in her photos. They had been chatting for a few days about simple things like favorite movies and the best coffee shops in town. Nothing too serious, just friendly conversation that made Thomas feel a little less lonely. One Thursday evening after a particularly long day at his accounting firm, Thomas was texting back and forth with Jolie while half watching a basketball game. Emma was upstairs doing homework. He had just poured himself a glass of wine when he decided to be a bit more forward than usual. His brother had told him he needed to show more confidence. So Thomas typed out a message that made him feel both brave and slightly ridiculous. "I keep thinking about what it would be like to take you to dinner somewhere quiet where we could just talk for hours. Maybe I could finally make you laugh in person." He hit send and immediately felt his face flush. At his age he still got nervous about these things. But then his phone buzzed almost instantly. The response confused him. It simply said, "Wrong number." Thomas felt his stomach drop. He looked at his screen more carefully and realized with horror that he had not sent the message to Jolie at all. In his distracted state he had somehow sent it to a number labeled only as V. Harrison, Pinnacle Industries. Victoria Harrison was the CEO of the largest commercial real estate company in the city. Thomas had been trying to get a meeting with her for months to discuss potentially handling their corporate accounting. He had sent her exactly one professional email through her assistant 3 weeks ago and had received no response. And now he had just sent her what could only be described as a flirty text message. "Oh no," Thomas said out loud to his empty living room. "Oh no no no." He immediately typed back, "I am so incredibly sorry, Ms. Harrison. That message was meant for someone else entirely. Please disregard. Again, my deepest apologies for the confusion and unprofessional error." He set his phone down and put his head in his hands. There went any chance of ever working with Pinnacle Industries. Victoria Harrison was legendary in business circles for being brilliant, demanding, and completely no-nonsense. People called her the Ice Queen, though never to her face. She had built her company from nothing and had a reputation for not suffering fools. And Thomas had just sent her a message about taking her to a quiet dinner. His phone buzzed again. "Where do you live?" Thomas stared at the screen. That was unexpected. He hesitated, then typed his address, wondering if she was planning to send a cease and desist letter by courier. "Be there in 5 minutes, came the reply. Thomas stood up so fast he nearly knocked over his wine glass. 5 minutes. Why was Victoria Harrison coming to his house? Was she going to yell at him in person? Sue him for harassment? He had no idea, but suddenly his palms were sweating and he was looking around his living room, seeing it through the eyes of a powerful CEO. Emma's soccer cleats were by the door. There were dishes in the sink. His tie was draped over the back of the couch. It was just a regular house where a regular single dad lived with his daughter. Before he could panic further, the doorbell rang. Thomas walked to the door feeling like he was moving through water. He opened it and there stood Victoria Harrison. She looked different than she did in the business magazines. She was wearing a blue dress that was elegant but not quite as severe as her usual business suits. Her blonde hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders instead of being pulled back tightly. But it was her eyes that caught him most. They looked tired in a way that was deeply familiar to Thomas. It was the same tiredness he saw in his own mirror every morning. "Mr. Mitchell," she said, and her voice was softer than he expected. "Ms. Harrison," Thomas managed. "I really cannot apologize enough for. May I come in?" Thomas stepped aside and she walked past him into his living room. She looked around, taking in the lived-in comfort of the space. Her eyes landed on a framed photo of Emma on the mantel. "Your daughter?" Victoria asked. "Yes, Emma. She is 12. Victoria nodded slowly. "I have a son. Daniel. He is 14. Thomas had not known that. Victoria Harrison kept her personal life extremely private. There was a long pause. Victoria turned to face him and Thomas was surprised to see that she looked almost uncertain. It was jarring to see any vulnerability in someone so famously composed. "I need to explain why I am here," Victoria said. "When I got your text I was sitting in my office at 7:30 on a Thursday night eating takeout alone for the fourth night in a row. I was looking at my calendar and realizing I have not had an actual conversation with another adult that was not about work in months. Maybe years." She walked over to the couch and sat down without asking, looking suddenly exhausted. "And then I got this message from someone I did not really know. A message that was sweet and honest and clearly sent by mistake. And instead of being angry I just thought how long it has been since anyone wanted to take me to dinner somewhere quiet. How long it has been since I was just Victoria and not the CEO of Pinnacle Industries." Thomas sat down carefully in the chair across from her. "I drove over here without really knowing why," Victoria continued, "maybe to prove to myself that there are still normal people in the world having normal lives. People who make silly mistakes and get nervous about dating and live in houses that feel like actual homes." She looked at him directly and Thomas saw something in her expression that made his heart ache with recognition. It was loneliness, the deep kind that settles into your bones when you have been strong for too long. "I lost my husband 5 years ago," Victoria said quietly, "car accident. One day he was there and the next he was gone. I threw myself into work because it was the only thing that made sense. I built the company bigger and somehow along the way I forgot how to be anything other than busy. I lost my wife 3 years ago," Thomas said just as quietly, "cancer. She fought hard but," he did not finish the sentence. "He did not need to." Victoria nodded. "Then you understand." "Yes." They sat in silence for a moment. It was not an uncomfortable silence. It was the silence of two people who had both learned that some things cannot be put into words. "Your message was not even meant for me," Victoria said with the smallest hint of a smile, "and yet it was the most human thing anyone has said to me in a very long time." "I really am sorry for the confusion," Thomas said, "though I am glad you are here even if I am still completely mortified." "Do not be," Victoria said. "I think maybe we both needed this." Emma appeared at the top of the stairs in her pajamas. "Dad, who are you talking to?" "Sorry, sweetheart," Thomas called up. "Just a colleague. Go back to your homework." Emma squinted down at Victoria. "Are you on a date?" "Emma," Thomas said in a tone that he hoped conveyed both embarrassment and "please go back upstairs." But Victoria laughed. It was a real laugh, warm and surprised. "Not exactly," she called up to Emma, "but your dad did accidentally ask me out earlier." Emma grinned. "Good. He needs to get out more." Then she disappeared back down the hall. Thomas put his face in his hands. "I apologize for my daughter." "Do not," Victoria said, and her smile was genuine now. "She is right. You probably do need to get out more. We both do." She stood up and Thomas stood with her. "I should go. I just needed to." She paused. "I do not even know what I needed. To remember that there is life outside of boardrooms maybe." Thomas walked her to the door. "For what it is worth, Ms. Harrison." "Victoria," she interrupted. "Please call me Victoria." "Victoria," Thomas said, and the name felt natural. "For what it is worth, I think you are probably not as cold as people say you are." "I am not cold," Victoria said softly. "I am just tired of pretending I am not lonely." She stepped outside, then turned back. "That quiet dinner you mentioned. The one where two people just talk for hours." "Yes. Would you want to do that sometime, actually with me this time?" Thomas felt something warm spread through his chest. "I would like that very much." "It cannot be anything official," Victoria said quickly. "I mean, I cannot date someone who works with my company, and I assume you still want that accounting contract." "Actually," Thomas said, "I think I would rather just have dinner with you. The business can sort itself out." Victoria looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Saturday night, 7 o'clock. There is a small Italian place on Maple Street that hardly anyone knows about." "I know the one," Thomas said. "I will be there." Victoria walked to her car, then turned back one more time. "Thomas." "Yes. Thank you for the mistake." Thomas watched her drive away, then closed the door. Emma came bounding down the stairs. "Dad, was that really about work?" Thomas smiled at his daughter. No, sweetheart. That was about something much better than work. Good, Emma said, because she seemed nice. Sad but nice. Yes, Thomas agreed, she did. That Saturday Thomas arrived at the small Italian restaurant at exactly 7 o'clock. Victoria was already there sitting at a corner table. She was wearing jeans and a simple sweater and looked more relaxed than he had ever seen her. They talked for 3 hours. About their children and their losses and the strange lonely paths their lives had taken. They talked about small things too, like favorite books and how neither of them really understood modern music. They laughed more than Thomas had laughed in years. When the restaurant started closing around them, Victoria reached across the table and touched his hand briefly. This was nice, she said. Can we do it again? Yes, Thomas said. I would really like that. They did do it again. And again. Slowly, carefully, two lonely people found their way toward something that felt like hope. They took their children to the park together. They had quiet dinners. They learned to laugh again. It was not a fairy tale. It was better than that. It was real and complicated and full of the messy, beautiful work of two people choosing to be vulnerable again. And it all started with one misplaced text message sent by a nervous single dad who was just trying to be brave.